If you think it's impossible to live and make ends meet on just $1.25 a day, you're absolutely right. You're thinking exactly right. $1.25 is even less than what we pay for a simple drink. Now, let's compare that amount to luxury goods. For example, a pair of Nike shoes can cost anywhere from $100 to $700, depending on the model. Given that, earning just $1.25 a day seems impossible, right? But the truly bad news is there are many workers who live together in a very tiny room, often going hungry and frequently getting sick. And what's really quite striking is that these very workers actually belong to the very factories that make those expensive branded shoes we pay so much for just to look stylish, right? I'm talking about the workers in Nike factories in countries with extremely low wages like Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and others like them. In this video, I want to share this exact horrifying secret with you and reveal the hidden side of how Nike's luxury shoes are made, as well as the stories of the people who are suffocating beneath all this luxury. Imagine it's the beginning of summer. It's around 6 in the morning. The sun is out and it's ready to scorch your skin. Temperature over 35 Celsius, about 100 Fahrenheit. 100% humidity makes things worse. This is Tangerang, an industrial town near Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. But unfortunately, the reality here is much worse than we imagine. Let's take our small camera and enter the slums of Tangerang. A lot of things stand out right from the first glance. A narrow alley with an open sewage drain, its stench hitting you before you even see it. Houses with roofs covered by just a thin sheet of galvanized metal. You should know that galvanized sheets are cheap, low-quality, corrugated iron sheets that are easily punctured. When it rains, they make a loud tapping noise, and if they're under the sun, they turn the house into an oven. And the condition of the walls isn't any better. They're all cracked. Through the barred, mesh-like windows, you can catch a glimpse of the real lives of the workers. They live in a small room basically about the size of a rug. But here, there's no sign of a rug, no furniture, not even a bed or an air conditioner. There's just a thin mat on a bumpy concrete floor. Even the bathroom, kitchen, and water are shared with several families. The air is heavy and stifling. At night, either big cockroaches crawl onto the mat, or rats the size of basketballs fall from the ceiling onto your head. In the mornings, you have to start your day with the stench of a sewage stream. And that's without any shower to freshen you up or breakfast to give you energy. But all these significant hardships are endured just for a truly meager wage, and of course coupled with incredibly grueling work hours, something like 12 to 15 hours a day, for 6 or even 7 days each and every week. After deducting rent, electricity, and transportation costs from your wages, all you can afford is a small plate of rice or vegetables, maybe a small pack of eggplants, and a cheap drink like iced tea. Of course, if you push yourself a little harder, you might even be able to buy some dishwashing liquid for your daily cleaning. In short, you have to choose just one meal out of breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Basically, eating is just enough to keep you from starving, not for nutrition or energy. What's worse is that if a worker gets sick under these conditions, say comes down with a high fever of 40 degrees, they have to choose between buying medicine or food because they can only afford one. That is, if they can even afford it. On top of that, emotionally, the workers aren't doing well either. Because of their long working hours, they practically never see their kids. They can't afford to send their children to school. So an entire generation grows up without any education or upbringing, and they have no future either. Unless, of course, they end up working at the Nike factory just like their parents. I should mention that if an ordinary person who isn't used to these conditions suddenly had to live this way, for example, a journalist reporting or documenting this situation would last 5 days in these harsh conditions. Because by the 5th day, things become completely critical. The body starts to break down and lose weight. It's a strange feeling, not just simple fatigue, but a kind of gradual shutdown that slowly takes over every part of you. It truly feels like a mobile cell phone that's completely out of battery and is only just staying on with its very last few percent of power. Now, set this harsh and exhausting life aside and consider the fact that Nike's brand value in 2024 has been reported at over $190 billion, and the price of a pair of Nike shoes, depending on the model, is estimated to be anywhere from $100 to $700 or even more. Meanwhile, producing each pair of these shoes only costs about $10 to $20, and the wage of a worker in Nike's contracted factories in Southeast Asia is sometimes less than $100 a month. Pay attention, that's per month. In other words, selling just one pair of shoes is worth more than a factory worker's monthly salary. So, where does all this astronomical profit go? Well, it mostly goes to the shareholders and top executives of the company, not to the workers who put in all the hard work to make these products. You should also know that aside from the workers' living conditions, the situation inside the factories while working isn't great either. Workers are forced to work in hot, crowded environments without proper ventilation. In addition, there have been reports of verbal and physical abuse, lack of workplace safety, and even no access to restrooms or clean drinking water. Worst of all, some workers have developed severe respiratory illnesses from constantly inhaling glues and chemicals. Meanwhile, in some reports, especially during the 1990s and early 2000s, Nike was accused of exploiting and abusing child labor. Although Nike itself has explicitly stated that it strictly monitors this significant issue, some human rights activists persistently claim that these problems still exist indirectly within the extensive and intricate global supply chains of Nike's manufacturing factories worldwide. But when it comes to why things are this way, there are different opinions. Nike says, "We only place orders. We don't do the manufacturing ourselves." But is something like that even possible? All the contractors and manufacturers are almost entirely dependent on the orders they get from Nike. In fact, the contract prices, production schedules, worker wages, even the safety conditions and quality of the dormitories are all set by Nike's direct instructions. Because Nike is the designer of this system, a system that lets billions of dollars pile up in the hands of those at the top, while only hardship, poverty, and misery are left for those at the bottom. On the one hand, Nike claims that it cares about human rights and the environment, but many visitors to Nike's factories have seen firsthand that the brand does not allow any form of protest, and even the slightest objection is met with severe punishment and discipline. But in the midst of all this, there are still some people who support Nike and say that Nike has created thousands of jobs and at least given work to poor people. In fact, they argue that big brands like Nike have the right to make a profit. And now, if the workers are dissatisfied, they can just quit and go work somewhere else. But really, where can they go when there are no other options? In reality, in an unchecked capitalist system, there's no such thing as real choice. Choice is just an illusion. Because this system doesn't give you freedom or real options. It's just designed to keep you from dying. But human beings are worth so much more than that. We shouldn't pursue profit at any cost, especially if it means crushing people and nature along the way. That goes against democracy, human rights, and respecting the dignity of people. Of course, in the end, through a series of interviews with workers who had been working for hours under intense pressure, whistleblowing by workers who were punished for refusing to demolish their own homes, punishments like being beaten, kicked, tortured, detained, or even threatened with death, the discovery of waste and discarded shoes that had been burned near a mountain village right next to where children played, with the toxic smoke causing cancer and lung infections in many people, especially children, all of this came to light. And finally, global pressure and the media. Nike was ultimately forced to respond to its own shortcomings by making superficial changes, issuing encrypted and coded reports that only a select few, like the CEO and inspectors, had access to, and generally providing vague answers. But in my opinion, Nike and most big brands have completely gone down the wrong path of capitalism. Prioritizing profit over people has just become way too unethical. Isn't it time for the global community to realize what kind of sacrifices are made for the low-cost equals high-profit model? And it's important to know that there's always a way to make things better. For example, maybe all of us should join forces and help these workers. Or if we're going to wear expensive shoes, we should also think about the lives of the workers who may not speak our language but still human, and reconsider our decision at least once. Tell me, what other solutions do you think exist to help save these workers' lives? I'm sure we don't want to say that everyone who wears Nike shoes is a bad person, but with open eyes to the harsh realities hidden beneath luxury brands, what do you think we can actually do? On the other hand, all of us are caught up in a chain of production and consumption. But what do you think are the differences between indifference and raising awareness? Can actively supporting brands that are responsible be helpful and effectively change this flawed chain? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and also by commenting the phrase "This is my voice too." Let's show just how important this issue is and start a social movement and a civil protest so we can make our collective voices heard by those who need to hear them. In short, although Nike sports shoes are symbols of success, power, and a modern lifestyle, and are surrounded by flashy advertisements, support from sports stars, and astronomical prices, they also carry some harsh realities with them. Thousands of workers in developing countries produce these shoes for meager wages and under inhumane conditions. So, the profound lesson from this compelling story is simple. Behind big brands and luxury products, there's a dark mirror that starkly reveals how anonymous and deprived workers suffer day and night to produce these luxury goods, paying the ultimate price with their lives, while also being subjected to various physical and chemical abuses. But since an unregulated free market equals the exploitation of human labor, even consumers need to take responsibility. Maybe we can't save the world, but we can do our part, listen to the workers' voices, and help spread their message to others. Sometimes it might even be necessary to boycott luxury goods to force brands to take action, so that they improve the conditions of their workers. Because an ethical person can't bring themselves to turn a blind eye to the suffering, poverty, and blatant violation of the most basic human rights of others just to maintain a superficial sense of prestige. So change is necessary. Right now, we're at a point where we really need to listen to the voices and stories of the vulnerable and marginalized, and help them. Because something isn't right here, but we can fix it, and now is the time.